Zach Westerbeck, welcome to the podcast, my man. I am pumped to have this conversation. Thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me on, Stu. I'm happy to be here, man.
Absolutely. So, as we kick this thing off, I figured if you could just give the audience kind of a little bit of a background as far as like, what did life look like for little Zach as you were growing up?
My life was, I would say my life was somewhat fairly typical in terms of an upbringing, and I would even go as far as to say that I had a very blessed upbringing. I grew up in the Midwest. I grew up in Indianapolis, Indiana,
Nice.
and grew up to yeah. Some the shout out to anybody that's from the Midwest or still in the Midwest. I've got plenty of friends and family there still, but I grew up two parents, one sister who's one of my best friends to this day. In fact, we're grabbing dinner tonight, and
Nice.
yeah. And I say that I grew up fairly blessed because my parents have been married for 30 plus years. There was plenty of love in the
Love that.
household. There wasn't, and obviously as a brain health advocate, I think about everything in terms of like psychologically what you go through, your thought patterns, how all this can impact your brain health later on down the road. I didn't have a traumatic childhood. There was plenty of love in the
Yeah.
household, plenty of opportunities, um, and grew up really hanging out with friends, playing sports, and going to school. So that was for me.
Yeah.
That was pretty much my childhood in a
Yeah.
nutshell.
So pretty, I mean, phenomenal upbringing. And I could definitely relate. I got two great parents, an older brother, best friends with him. So I can relate in a big way. And I'm curious, like, as you continued on your life, and I think we'll circle back to maybe this part of your life a little later. But as you went on later into your life and you kind of went to high school, you went to college, as you were going through that phase of, kind of establishing your foundation, I guess we could say, did you have an idea of, what you wanted to do when you were growing up? Did you have an idea of, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna become this, or not really?
It's a great question. I think, and I see this a lot with the people in my life and around me, that a lot of times you kind of end up going down a path of what you know and what you see. And
True
for me,
that.
I grew up in a household where my dad was in sales. And so I saw him in that capacity. And so, and growing up, everybody was like, you're so personable. You could have a conversation with a wall, like all that stuff, where it's just
Yeah.
like you can have conversations with people. You're proficient in the soft skills. You'll probably end up going into sales. And so lo and behold, my first job out of school was technology sales. So it wasn't really me being like I remember in one of the episodes I was listening to of yours that like the person knew from like an early age. That
Right.
was not me. I was kind of getting
Yeah.
messaging, but I didn't really know, like I wasn't super passionate about one thing or another.
Yeah. Okay. And so when you were in technology sales, is this something that you, like, as you went into that, did you have the idea of, I'm going to go into this to ultimately leave, or I'm going to go in this to stay in this? Because I think one thing
Mm,
that I've noticed from working from people is if you have the intention of, I'm going to come here to gain a skill sets, to grow, to go to the thing that I
right,
know I'm truly supposed to
right.
do, it's easier to go through that transition versus saying, I'm going to do this and I'm a technology salesperson and this is my identity. And then if you're going to leave it or something, you're like, well, I don't, it's so much harder to see the next step versus if you come into it with the idea this is just part of the process of figuring out your life. So I'm curious for you as you went into that, um, like, was it a long-term play? Was it a short-term play?
That's an excellent question. And it was definitely, I think, a short-term play. Not knowing what you're not like all I knew is that I liked business and
Yeah.
entrepreneurship was interesting to me. So what I mean by that is I guess I did leave out one pretty significant chunk. I should backtrack.
Okay,
So when I
let's
was
backtrack.
11 years old, yeah, let me backtrack real quick because that question is what made me think a little bit more about. I was thinking more through the lens of what you're passionate about like specific topic versus more of a broad stroke. And so what I mean by that
Okay.
is I was 11 years old. I remember I was playing PS2 at the time, PlayStation 2, in my room. I want to say it was like Grand Theft Auto or something, like
Nice.
one of the originals. And my dad came into the room and he said, "Son, this is the summer you learn how to make money." I'm like, "Okay, what does that even really mean?" And he basically said, "You're going to go door to door and you're going to ask every single one of our neighbors if they want their grass cut. And you're going to
Hmm.
offer it for free if they want it done so that they can see what your quality of work is. And if they like your work afterwards, the goal is to get a couple clients, and this is what I want you to do this summer." And so from 11 years old until 18, that's what I did every summer. I cut
Huh.
grass, and like it started with, I want to say, 2 yards at 11. And by the time I was done, I handed off the business to my sister. And I think we had somewhere between like 35 and 40. And
Let's
it,
go.
it, yeah. But it was just such a simple process. There was no overcomplicating it. And I remember it was just start in your neighborhood, cut those yards. Once you've
Yeah.
done a good job with them and you've earned their trust, you can then ask them if there's other things that they want done, fertilizing their yard. Do they want mulch put? Again, this is the Midwest, so you got
Yeah.
like people
Yeah.
mulch their garden beds. They've got huge yards in the Midwest, so they fertilize their lawns. There's so much upkeep that goes into taking care of your home and your property, and so that's kind of how I expanded.
Hmm.
It's kind of like how I operate in my business today, which is you've got some core clients that you do a lot of business with, and then you've got clients that you have, one-off transactions here and there with the hope that you can build a longer term relationship. But what was interesting is I handed off all the lawns to my sister, and I was getting ready to go into college, and my parents were like, "Okay, well, we still want you to have a part-time job for the summer." And I worked at GNC, the nutrition and supplement
Yeah.
store, and I that was my first time ever having a job,
Yeah.
and I learned real quickly that I am a terrible employee. Terrible. I
Yeah.
almost got fired on two or three separate occasions for showing up late, for not doing exactly what they told me to do. And that pattern of behavior just kind of followed me. It just kind of followed me. I had a landscaping job the following summer for one of my childhood friends' dads. He almost fired me.
Yeah.
I had a job at PF Chang's. And it was the same stuff. It's like
Yeah.
showing up late. When I was there, hey, everybody was happy.
Right.
Once you get me there, I'll do what I do. But I just always kind of looked at this and I'm like, I don't really care about this that
Yeah.
much. And I don't care about it. And I like having my own schedule and doing things on my own time. And I like that my effort translates into more money. And I kind of reflected on that time period, and it was like I was always the kid growing up that out of the friends, like, you want to go out to eat? I can do that. You want to go
Yeah.
to a movie? I can do that. You want to, whatever you do as a teenage kid, like I've got money to be able to do whatever we want to do. And so to your question, going into Cisco and into the technology world,
Yeah.
I I always kind of thought to myself, I'm going to go into this and see how much I like it because I didn't know. But I'm feeling that entrepreneurship, to some capacity, is going to have to eventually be
Totally.
a part of my journey because I just don't know if I'm a great employee. Like,
Yeah.
and there's nothing wrong with that. I've had to come to terms with that because for so long I was kind of like, what's wrong with me? Like, why can't I just fall in line? Why can't I just
Right.
really, really care about what my boss's boss has to say to me, even though I know that they don't really care that much about me and it's about the numbers and sales. And I didn't start this company and I'm somewhat passionate about the products, but not really. And the only reason why I came to work here is for the paycheck. And I
Right.
always said I would never sell anything that I didn't believe in. So like as long as I knew that the product was solid, I was comfortable enough, but certainly not passionate. So that
Yeah.
was a long-winded way of getting there to say it definitely wasn't, it was always there in the back of my mind.
Yeah. I think one thing that's a very interesting thing to look at as you kind of just expanded upon that whole like journey of kind of navigating through your life is how much you care about what you do is a direct correlation to if it's what you're meant to do. Right? It's like
Mm,
if you're finding yourself at a job or in a career or building a business and you're not like you don't really care about it, that is a major red flag sign in the air that like, hey, you should not be doing this. Like you should figure out what's your exit strategy, what's the next thing that you can do, what's something that you actually care about. And if you move in the direction of asking yourself the question of what is something that I care about and finding yourself how you can do more work in alignment with that, that is by default going to be more in line with your purpose. So I love kind of the way that you broke that down, and at least that's what I heard from that is it's like you got to care about it. If you don't care about it, you're not going to show up the way that you're meant to show up in this world. And ultimately, you got to find what's the thing that you care about. Ask yourself, what do I care about? Do something in alignment with that, and that's going to be more in alignment with your purpose. So, yeah,
when you said red flag, it just, I could picture it, and you're absolutely right. And it's a feeling. And I was telling my fiance this the other day, I can't fake this.
yeah,
I can't fake it. I can't fake how much I care about brain health and psychology and
yeah,
public speaking and this business. I can't fake it. And the reason why I know that is because it doesn't matter what happens in this business. The failures in particular is what I'm referring to.
yeah,
I don't care. I don't care. I'm not stopping. I'm not quitting. And I remember at the very beginning, I used to be so worried. This was when I was still at Cisco and I was in my transition phase. What if there's a better speaker that comes along and takes my spot? Or what if somebody builds a better business than me? Try,
yeah,
try, try to be better than me. Try to build a better business than me. This isn't even, I would rather collaborate with you. This isn't even a competition
yeah.
thing to me, because one thing that I've realized is that we're largely competing with ourselves, and you cannot fake passion. You just can't. It's
Amen.
something that, and this is why corporations, they offer huge incentives. They offer payment programs. They offer stock employee benefits. They offer paid time off, because they need to attract people that would otherwise not care about what's going on inside of the company. And I just could, some people are great at faking it. They would rather take comfort over meaning. I get that. This is not comfortable. I do not, anyone listening right now and who taps into Stu's Finding
Yeah,
Direction podcast, just understand that finding your purpose, your meaning is great. And I always say to the students that this doesn't need to be something that pays the bills. But if you decide that your meaning and your passion now needs to pay the bills, don't think that it's comfortable, because it's not. It's not comfortable at all.
yeah,
And and that's the biggest thing that I would say. You know, the paychecks are on me. If I'm sick, if I'm out, if I'm tired and I don't feel like doing something for the day, it doesn't matter.
right.
It's either getting done or it's not, and you can't fake that.
Yeah,
You can't fake it. So that's what I would say to everybody. And I look, I'm in complete alignment with your mission and what you just said, and that's why I wanted to come on this podcast. I think that living a life of meaning is the only way to go.
yeah,
But I also understand why some people pick comfort. I get it. Like, I really do. I understand it. They want to go out to nice dinners and take their 2 vacations a year and have money that they're consistently putting away in the bank. And they're really looking out to 65 and saying, hey, when I turn 65 and retire, that's when I'll be able to do whatever I want. And some people
yeah,
are comfortable with that. And I understand that. So
yeah,
that's my rant off what you just said, but you can't fake it. You'll know
yeah.
when you're tapped into your thing. You'll know.
Totally. You 100,000,000% will know. And if you're listening to this and you're going, well, I don't know, that means you're not quite there. So you got to keep searching. You got to keep looking. And so one thing I'd be curious if we dive back into your story. So you're at Cisco, you're doing tech sales. how do you all of a sudden go
Yeah.
from that to now you're speaking, now you're writing a book, now you're, huge mental wellness advocate and coaching people in the space? Like, how do you, where, explain this transition to us?
Yeah. Absolutely. So it's been fun kind of looking because I've got a keynote that I've been developing that's finally ready, and it's going to be rolled out this semester at a couple universities. So I'm excited about that.
Heck
But
yeah.
in reflecting on the story, it goes like this, right? I moved down to North Carolina and I start working for the tech giant Cisco Systems. And I'm really happy because I've got a really great job out of school and I'm in this early in career program and I'm with 30 to 40 kids my age that are going through the same thing. So we're learning about Cisco, we're
Right.
learning about how to sell, we're developing skills where I'm like, you know what, to be 22, 23 years old right out of school, this is awesome. And there was really kind of two parallel storylines going on. The one I think we're going to get into eventually, which is my
Yeah.
own experience with mental health. And I think we'll talk about that here in a second. The
Yeah.
other one was with the arena that you see me in now, public speaking, um, being a published author, coaching, right? Working with college students, working with adults on improving their brain health and ultimately finding that meaning in their lives. Started with one comment from a coworker. So he comes up to me at work.
Yeah.
I've known the guy for all of 2 months, and I every now and again I'll text him. I'll just say, "You have no idea what you've done," just joking, like you changed my life. He comes up to
Huh.
me and he goes, "Hey man, I'm gonna go to this thing called Toastmasters on Tuesday night, and I think that you should come." And I remember I said to him, I said, "What is Toastmasters? Is this where you learn how to
Yeah.
like give champagne toast at a wedding?" I don't really think that that's applicable to me.
Yeah.
And he's like, I remember I was such a smart ass about it. And he looked back at me and he goes, "No, man, like this is an opportunity. Toastmasters is an international organization and they focus on teaching you the foundations of public speaking. You're in corporate America now. You're going to be giving presentations. You're going to be in front of clients. This is probably a good skill to have."
Yeah.
And so I said, "You know what, touche. You're probably right. Let me go check out this Tuesday meeting and we'll get one session in. I probably won't get anything from this at all. And we'll move on with life." So I go and they've got this thing called table topics. And this is where you get
Huh.
randomly called up on the stage and you've got 2 minutes max to talk about a subject that they give you on the spot. So you
Huh.
stand up there, they go, "Here's your topic. You've got 2 minutes, go." And they call roughly three, four, five people up every meeting to do this. And the idea behind table topics is there are going to be times where things don't go the way that you plan. And if you're in a public speaking setting and you're not prepared to deal with the impromptu
Yeah.
situation, you could freeze up and be in trouble. So they want to put people on the spot. So they call three or four or five of us up. Can't remember the exact number. I do my 2 minutes. I sit back down. And at the end of the chapter meeting, after everybody's given their speeches and done table topics, they pick winners. So they pick a winner
Huh.
for the speech of the day, and they pick a winner for the table topics of the day. And they picked me. I won. And I'm like,
Let's
okay, first
go.
off, I'm not even a member at this chapter, but I enjoyed myself up there on stage so much. And I just won this table topics. Like, I'm definitely coming back next week because
Yeah.
now I'm interested in giving a speech because I'd seen
Yeah.
that people had given speeches. And from that day forward, I was hooked. So for the rest of 2014, which is when I graduated and moved down to Raleigh, the rest of 2014, all of 2015, I am absolutely devouring personal development content, books.
Yeah.
I'm tearing through books. I'm tearing through the Toastmasters public speaking manual. They had kind of a little book and I'm going through all of it and I'm trying to speak every single week if I can. And I'm doing it
Nice.
to get back to what we were talking about earlier because I'm just passionate. I just
Yeah.
enjoy it. Like it's fun for me. It's almost like playing a sport. You get a bit of a thrill out of it and you get the deep meaning in terms of I wasn't just going up there and talking about random things. I was always going in with a topic where I thought, you know what, this is something I'm reading from a book. This is a concept that has resonated with me, that has helped me out in my life. Let me
Yeah.
go and share this with the people in my chapter and uh, kind of, help them out. See if if this resonates with anybody else. And
Right.
so that was really the start.
And
And
so
what's
did that
interesting is,
eventually?
again,
Oh yeah, go
yeah.
ahead.
Oh, well, what I was going to say is that actually, if you connect the breadcrumbs, Steve Jobs says you can only connect the dots looking back. So you have to trust in your intuition,
Yeah,
Dharma, your purpose. I'm sure you love that quote. And
totally.
when you look back, the internship that I had my junior summer was with Cisco. That's how I ended up getting the job. And I
Gotcha.
shadowed an account manager. And that entire summer, he made me write a speech every single week and present to him about something on Cisco.
Hmm.
And I ended up winning. What they had was this internship competition. I ended up winning this intern innovation competition, and they had me speak in front of all 300 interns in San Jose. I'd been giving speeches all summer, and so I felt comfortable going up there and
Yeah.
speaking. That was the first time I ever spoke in front of a huge crowd.
Let's
Um,
go. That's awesome.
but the dots didn't really start to connect until Raleigh and until I was in Toastmasters. So I'll pause there. I know you had a
Gotcha.
question.
Yeah, so when it at what point did Toastmasters turn into like doing this for a living? Because obviously Toastmasters, you're going, you're practicing, you're sharpening your saw, you're getting better, you're improving your skills. At what point do you
Right.
go, this is something that I really want to uh, make as part of a living?
So let's pull in the second narrative, the second storyline that was running parallel to Toastmasters, and I'll tie it all together. So
Yeah.
I moved down to Raleigh. I'm in this early in career program. I'm having the time of my life. I'm having a blast. We're learning about Cisco during the day, but we're trainees. It's almost like it's like being a student all over again.
Yeah.
There are no expectations. There's no pressure cooker from Cisco right now on you need to be delivering on sales. You need to be hitting numbers. It's all fun. You're
Hmm.
learning during the day and then hanging out with everybody at night. So it's a great time. And I was having the time of my life for about the first 10 months. And then right around the 10-month mark, things started to change with the way that my brain functioned. And so all of a sudden, I'm waking up with the pounding heart, like a drum line in my chest. I've got sweaty palms, dry mouth, racing thoughts. And I'm 22, 23 years old.
Yeah.
I'm 10-hour drive from home. I know that I don't like what I'm feeling, and I know that I want to change it. And so 2016 was right around the corner. And I decided, you know what, I'm going to flip my brain back to the way that it used to be. And the way that I was going to do this was by going to the gym, going to Cisco, sitting in the steam room, sweating out all the toxins in my body, and kind of doing a detoxify month. So I was going to take the first 31 days of January and do that. And so that's what I did. And I did get results. But the challenge and what really set me on my journey that you see now is it wasn't the results that I was looking for. And by the
Hmm.
end of the month, the symptoms that I just told you and your listeners about had intensified and gotten worse, that had turned into severe anxiety. The second symptom that had crept in was depression. And I had never experienced depression before, or at least never had the words for it.
Yeah.
And I didn't understand just how crippling depression was. And so all of a sudden, within a couple of months, my brain is going through this shift, and my plan didn't work. So I'm in panic mode now,
Yeah.
and I'm trying to shift it back to the way that it used to be. And over the next couple of months, I'm doing a couple things really, really well. I'm hiding from the outside world what's going on internally, so nobody else knows about it. And number
Yeah.
two is I'm denying to myself just how quickly my brain health was deteriorating. And it was deteriorating quickly. And at the peak of my low point, I was having thoughts of suicide from the moment I woke up until the moment I went to bed. So this was waking up, getting dressed for work. This was driving in rush hour traffic. This was
Yeah.
sitting in meetings with key stakeholders and trying to like pay attention. Meanwhile, the entire time I'm just getting hit with these intrusive
Yeah.
thoughts that I can't stop. And the harder that I try to stop them, the worse that they get. And so I'm just having these constant thoughts of suicide. And it wasn't until I hit my rock bottom moment where I seriously considered suicide as my only option out. Like I looked 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road, and I thought to myself, if this is how I'm going to feel,
Yeah.
if this is what it's going to be, this isn't what I signed up for. I can't live my life like this. And so before I took any action, I said, you know what, let me confide in my support system and see if they have any guidance for me. And so I called my parents, and what they did for me is what I now do for others. They
Yeah.
didn't have all the answers, but they encouraged me to seek help. And in late 2016, I found a psychologist that knew what was going on with me. And I was diagnosed with a chronic brain disorder known as obsessive compulsive disorder, or OCD, where the core symptoms are severe anxiety, deep depression, and thoughts of suicide. And through talk therapy specific to OCD, which is exposure and response prevention, lifestyle changes and mindset shifts over the course of the next couple of years, I got back to a place where I wanted to help other people. And so this is where the stories converge.
Yeah.
Um, Essentially, 2016 rolls around, and this is when I'm starting to have these symptoms. And I'm increasingly, and I think that my fiance and I were having this conversation, and oftentimes I think pain is what moves people to make a
Yeah.
change in their life. Like, that's why I understand why people choose the comfort route. Because if you never feel significant pain, sometimes it's not enough to move the needle. And I
For
get
sure.
that. Like, especially with entrepreneurship, and I'm sure that you're familiar with this experience as well, and just going on that journey. Entrepreneurship is hard. It's really hard. And I've got friends in tech sales that work 10, 15, 20 hours max a week, making 250, 300, 400, $500,000 a year. That's comfort. It's comfort. And so
Yeah.
if the pain isn't strong enough, it's not going to move you to want to change. And for me, I wasn't looking for the pain. You know, this is not a suggestion for people out there to go, you
Yeah.
know, I need to go out and find my pain. I need to shake it up a little bit. I don't agree with
Yeah.
that. I think that you want to find your passion, and that should be the driver, but oftentimes I think pain does become a part of the equation. And so for me, um, 2016 rolls around, I'm feeling extreme pain. This is the most lost I've ever felt. And that's why I'm not really ashamed to say that I had what I would categorize as a blessed upbringing, because I think that
Yeah.
everybody is going to hit that journey. They're going to hit that pain, that wall at some point in their lifetime. And I think it just looks different for everyone. Um,
Absolutely.
and so Toastmasters is becoming one of the only places that I can escape to. In 2016, Toastmasters was a haven for me. And it was the one place that when I was up there speaking, because I was so focused on the speech and remembering what I needed to say and connecting with audience members, it was almost like I was getting out of my head and into my
Yeah.
heart and more
Yeah.
focused on delivering the speech. So I would escape the anxiety and depression for 7, 8, 9, 10 minutes. Those are how long the speeches were. And I'll never forget it. This is really what set things in a different direction for me. I had a speech one night, and I'd I'd relapsed on my symptoms. So by this point, I'd
Mm.
matched myself up with a psychologist that knew what was going on with me, and I'd started talk therapy, but I wasn't committed to the process because I didn't have a deeper why as to why the recovery was so important.
Yeah.
And so I would go to a couple therapy sessions, and I would feel just a little bit better, and I would compare it to 2016 because we're into 2017 now. And I'd say, oh, well, it's not as bad as it used to be. Right. So I'm better now. And what would
Yeah.
happen every single time? My symptoms would creep back in. I'd start to feel severe anxiety, deep depression, and before you know it, thoughts of suicide. And so I remember there was one night I had to give a speech. It didn't feel like going. I had relapsed on my therapy, so my symptoms had crept back in. In leading up to this speech, I'd lost probably 15 pounds. I was exhausted. I wasn't sleeping well.
Dang.
My eyes were puffy. They were bloodshot. I
Yeah.
probably looked like the Walking Dead when I walked in there.
Yeah.
And in fact, I actually had a member walk up to me before the speech and ask me, like, with a real look of concern, "Are you okay, Zach?" And I remember that just like it hit so deep at that moment. But I
Yeah.
go up, I go give this speech because at this point, this is my lifeline. I'm like, you know what? Maybe I'll go and get a little boost of energy out of this speech. Let me show up. It was a commitment. Let me do it. And I speak. The chapter that I was a part of was in this musty, dank old basement in a church off of Glenwood Avenue in Raleigh, North Carolina. There was
Yeah.
probably 25 members max on a good day. So I spoke maybe somewhere between 10 to 25 people that night, but I spoke like I was speaking to 1,000.
Huh.
Um, and I remember after I gave the speech, everybody was packing up and we were closing up shop for the night. And a woman named Janie Schaefer came up to me. And I'd gotten a lot of support from the community. Everybody in that Toastmasters group, we still stay in contact. And in fact, when I was in North Carolina recently giving a speech at UNC and Duke, I
Huh.
stopped by just to
So cool.
peek through the window, see the origins. But Janie walks up to me and she looks me in my eyes and she goes, "Zach, have you considered public speaking as a profession? Because you're really good." And I kind of, you know, taken aback a little bit, slightly flattered, of course. I'm a young man. I think I'm 24, 25 at the time.
Yeah.
And I said, "You know what, Janie, no, I haven't. I've been doing this because I enjoy it. And I enjoy the process of writing these speeches and then speaking. And I get fulfillment out of this because I
Right.
feel like the topics I talk about are meaningful to you all and can help you." But her words echoed in my ears that night. And when I woke up, it was like everything clicked. And the why and the meaning behind everything that I was going through. Remember, we got these two storylines running
Yeah.
parallel to each other, was so that I could come out the other side a stronger, better version of myself so that I could help others on their journey to overcoming their brain health challenges. Again, doesn't have to be specific to OCD, but anxiety, depression, and thoughts of suicide, they feel the same. Doesn't matter whether you've
Yeah.
got an incurable brain disorder or you've just lost a loved one and you're experiencing anxiety and depression, or you're in your life journey. And this is what I think your podcast does really well. And you're feeling just lost. You're feeling purposeless. You're feeling purposelessness. You look around in your life and you go, what do I really have to live for? That can
Yeah.
bring on feelings of anxiety, depression, thoughts of suicide. And so um, for me, that's when I really started to look at public speaking differently. And that was
Yeah.
early 2017. And since that day, I've been in pursuit of that and
Yeah.
trying to figure out how I make that a reality and a full-time job. And I'm very fortunate. I've had mentors come into my life along that process and really help me refine my message and specifically my niche. Who am I speaking to? And I think that that's really what brought things full circle and has allowed me to start a business that's experiencing success. So it's been
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. So I love, I think one thing that everybody can take from that, if you're in this place of, feeling lost or anxiety or depression, is asking yourself almost like, how can you turn your mess into your message? It's like, what is something
Mm,
that's taken you down to your knees? And is there a lesson you got from that? Is there something that you learned through that you can use to give to other people? Because just like you said, once you start to pour into other people, and
right.
in doing some of my research on you before, one thing you said that I just loved is you said initially sometimes we try to seek out our purpose and it's all kind of internal. It's like about me. But when you learn to take your purpose and turn it external and say, well, what can I do for others? How can I help others? That's when you find it's like a different level of purpose. And I love how you've done that in your story. And a few last questions I have for you, but one I would be curious is, you know, you and I both grew up with what we could say is like a blessed childhood. You know what I mean? It was great. We had a supportive family, people that love you, and all these different things. And I've noticed it even through my own childhood. There were things that I took that showed up later in my life that weren't because I had a bad childhood, but because I took things and basically attached a poor definition. I started telling myself a poor story from something that happened to
Yeah.
me as a kid, right? And later it
Yep.
resulted into a bad thing in my life. And so I'm curious for you, like, and maybe it sparks it at childhood something happened, or maybe it was, kind of as you were in your 20s, but like, what do you think initially caused you to, I know you said, you felt like your brain changed that one moment, 10 months into working the tech stuff. What do you feel like really brought on this like anxiety and this depression and these suicidal thoughts? Like, was it that you felt so lost? Was it that, like, what do you feel like initially brought that on?
Yeah, that's a great question. And what I will say just quickly off of your last note, I love what you said, your message, your message. I say your test
Yeah.
into your testament. And I think
I love
it's the
that.
same idea. But what we're talking about is a growth mindset. So people
Yeah.
operate out of a fixed or a growth mindset. Fixed is everything static in my life. My intelligence is fixed. My personality is fixed, and it's not very motivating. And so people that have a fixed mindset tend to shy away from challenges and look at setbacks as something that's negative. Whereas somebody with a growth mindset looks at everything, and this is exactly what you were talking to. So it's really just putting a label on it. Looks at
Right.
everything in their life and says, "What can I learn from this experience?" And when you start to do that, you become opportunistic and doors start to open that would
Yeah.
have otherwise always stayed shut. And I think that that's been a huge part of my success. I'm certainly sure it's been a part of yours and a lot of the people that you
Absolutely.
interview. Is when you fail, it's not saying it's always, I always say, I never lose, I always learn. Nothing is a loss for me, it's always a learn. And when you start to
For
take that
real.
mindset, you empower yourself. So I just wanted to piggyback off that, throw a couple labels on there for people
Yeah.
listening. You want to tap
Love
into a
that.
growth mindset, and whatever you're going through, start to look for, what can I learn from this that can positively impact my life? Something that I can take from this that makes me the next best version of myself. Um,
Love
but
that.
to answer your question, so specifically with diagnosable brain disorders like OCD, schizophrenia, bipolar, one of the big beliefs in the mental health community is that essentially, first we have to say that there's a gene component. So if you actually look at my family tree, one of my grandfathers had OCD, and
Hmm.
anxiety and depression run in one side of my family. And so we talk about heart disease, diabetes, and cancer. And we know that, like, hey, we talk about this. There's a genetic component to this. It can
Right.
happen to me, so I need to take care of myself. This is the exact same thing with our brains. And so
Huh.
there was always a genetic component there. I was, at some point, I was going to start to experience these symptoms. But what the mental health community believes is that oftentimes significant traumatic events can activate those genes, almost turn them on. They lie dormant, and then they can be
Huh.
activated and turned on, and they can get turned on at different points in your life. And the reason why I say that is
Dang.
stress, significant stress, can intensify and worsen those symptoms and really, really make them apparent to the individual. And so when I was in college, I had a girlfriend that I was madly in love with. She was my first love. And
Yeah.
everybody's had a first love, and you know what that
Yeah.
feels like. And it's puppy dog love, and it's very innocent. And
Yeah.
I remember, and we could unpack all of the learning lessons from how
Yeah.
terrible of a boyfriend I was at various points in that relationship. But at the end of the day, eventually she had had enough and she broke up with me, justifiably so. And I remember being absolutely devastated. It was at the end of my freshman year of college. We'd been together for 2.5, almost 3 years since high school, from the same hometown. And this was actually the first time that I experienced anxiety and depression. You know,
Hmm.
no appetite, not sleeping well, I'm anxious, I'm low mood. Um, but at the time, I was indulging a lot in substances. So I was smoking a lot of cannabis, I was partying a lot. And so I was really able, I think, in a lot of ways, to dull those symptoms. And so the reason why I give that backstory is I actually started to experience these symptoms in college, but I was able to kind of run
Right.
away from them because of the
Yeah.
substances that I was putting into my body. And it wasn't until I got into the corporate world where it's like, yeah, dude, you need to be sober for work and you need to not be
Yeah,
high. It's not cool to be high anymore during the week.
totally.
Like you need, so now all of a sudden I'm getting exposed to this whole new brain, and I'm also
I hear
mixing
you.
that in with the stress that's coming from, yes, the fun, of course, but the stress of, moving to a new environment, making new friends, being in a new workspace, all these different factors. And that's what just, boom, exploded the symptoms and took them off. So they were always there in college, but they didn't
Yeah,
really start to
I
come
hear you.
out and be noticeable until after.
Gotcha. Yeah, it is. I think it's so important to, it's like the little ticks that happen, and all of a sudden one day everything explodes. It's like, it's really asking ourselves the honest questions of like, are there things that are showing up in my life that I don't want to deal with? And if
Right.
there are, it's don't wait till it blows up, but it's saying, are there things that I don't want to deal with? And if the answer is yes, it just like you're saying, it's maybe reaching out to your support system, to your family,
Yes.
like reaching out to somebody and just saying, "Hey, I just got to get this out of my head, this thing that I've kind of been avoiding." And I just need to talk to somebody about it. And like again, maybe they have all the answers, maybe they don't have all the answers, but at least getting it out of your head takes you to it does something different to you when you get it out of your mind, out of your body, out of yourself, and then that is like and it's probably one of the most difficult steps, right? Is saying like let me put this out and not just hide under the rug and not just try to brush it out and push it down and avoid it and all these things, but let me really deal with this. So I think again, such a beautiful lesson for anybody that if you're having any of that stuff that's showing up that you don't want to deal with, it's like, all right, let this be the sign from the universe to you to do something. And that's going to start you in a beautiful journey of finding your direction in life. Because and we could be here for hours, and I'm going to kind of wrap this thing up. But I think one thing, it's like you could try to find direction in your life, but if on the inside you don't feel like you've figured yourself out in the sense of like being happy, not being depressed, not being anxious, then it's so much more difficult to figure out what you want to do with your life when you don't even know if you're okay, right? So it's like the first step is
Mm,
make sure you're okay. And then once you're okay and you're in a good headspace, then let's go find your direction and figure out what you want to do with your life. But at the end of the day, you got to take care of yourself first. And once you get into that space, then you're gonna have such a more beautiful trajectory in your life.
mm. I Everything you just said is what I talk about in my when I speak
Yeah.
at the collegiate level, and I agree with it all. And I know that we want to wrap it up, but what I will say to piggyback off that, another analogy for your listeners is I like to uh, I like to kind of reference the tea kettle and steam. So your body's like a tea kettle, and the water inside is like your emotions. And the
Mm.
flame on the stove that we can adjust, right? We can adjust the temperature. Sometimes it's completely turned off, sometimes it's turned up all the way. And this is
Yeah.
when we're going through significant events, death, divorce, breakups, major illnesses, job layoffs. Something impacts our brain health, and we shift on the brain health continuum, which I know we didn't get to dive in too much. That's going to boil our emotions. Just like
Yeah.
if you turn up the heat on a stove, it's eventually going to boil that water, and steam is going to be created, and that steam has to be released one way or another. And I think that people oftentimes either try to suppress their emotions, which just builds and bottles up. And then we have negative reactions to this. We act out and we cope in unhealthy ways. And what you're describing is when that steam builds up. And by the way, that temperature could be turned on one. If we're on a scale from 1 to 10 and it's just
Yeah.
a little bit, that doesn't mean that we wait until it's a 10, right? I'm all about
Right.
being proactive, but what you're talking about is expression of self, and that is releasing the steam that builds up in your body, or emotions, right? When you go through something. And so I'm a huge advocate of opening up to your support system, and then in conjunction with that, building out a team around you that's comprised of your support system on a personal level, and then professionally with
Yeah.
therapists, psychologists, that can help you unpack either what you're going through in the moment, or you would reference maybe some narratives from your childhood that you see showing up in today's world, unpacking that and seeing, are there other narratives that serve me better, that are ultimately going to make me a better human? But it all boils down to what you said, which is
Yeah.
being willing to be vulnerable and open up, release the steam inside of your body.
Yeah. True that, man. Well, Zach, we could, for real, we could be here for another 3 hours. But I want to be respectful of your time, man. I'm curious if people want to get more info on you, see what you're up to, grab the book, all that good stuff. Like, where's the best place people can find you?
Absolutely. So if people want to check out the book is titled You're Not Alone, and you can find it on Amazon, and it is a guide to overcoming anxiety and depression. So it goes a little bit more in depth into my story, and then it unpacks the tangible actions, scientifically proven steps that you
Love
can
it.
take to improve those symptoms. If you want to connect with me, go to zachwesterbeck.com, just my first and my last name. You can shoot me an email. I respond to everything. You can learn more about my coaching services on there, as well as the programs that I do from a speaking standpoint.
Yeah.
So you can find me at zachwesterbeck.com or on Instagram at Zach_Westerbeck. And I want to connect.
Perfect. Perfect.
Hit me up, DM me. I will message back.
Let's go, everybody. Dive into Zach's DMs. He's ready for you. So one
Yes.
last question I have for you. This is a question we ask all of our guests because we want to help people find direction, but we want to do it through action. And so, what would you say is one thing someone listening to this can do in the next 24 to 48 hours to start finding direction in their life?
It's a great question. And I think that when it comes to finding your direction, you first have to figure out where you're going to steer yourself. And that starts by understanding yourself, I think, at a deeper level. And so what I would recommend is for your listeners to take 5 minutes, jot down everything, brain dump. Don't make any structure, just brain dump everything that they are interested in and everything that they are passionate about, and see if there's any matchup between the two. And what I would say is I would encourage people to try to steer away from, I'm interested in crypto, because are you interested in crypto because it's interesting to you, or are you interested in crypto because you think you're going to make a fortune off of it?
Yeah.
So write that down. Take 5 minutes. What do I think I'm good at? What am I passionate about? And if those things tie up, then you're moving in the direction of your dharma, which is just your passion plus your skill set plus usefulness to the world. And that's really the last piece that we would have to dive in on another episode. But take
Yeah.
that 5 minutes. What am I good at? What am I passionate about? Is there any connection between the two?
Love it. Love it. Well, thank you again, Zach, so much for being here on the podcast. Again, man, looks like we're going to have to do an episode too. So thank you for your time today, brother. Thank you for the incredible amount of value and sharing your story with everybody.
Thank you, Stu. I really appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.